Good morning, Coolidge students and families. Happy Friday! It's Mrs. Ostrander here with your weekly read aloud. I wanted to share this week a book called Ruthie Bon Bair, Do Not Go to Bed with Wringing Wet Hair. And the reason I chose this book was just for fun. And honestly, the end of this book has a bit of a twist, and I think it would inspire all of our writers over the upcoming long weekends you'll have for our adjusted April vacation. So I hope you enjoy the book, and I'll see you again after the reading. Ruthie Bon Bair, Do Not Go to Bed with Wringing Wet Hair, written by Susan Lubner, illustrated by Bruce Waitley, and published by Abrams Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Harry N. Abrams Incorporated. In the middle of winter, in a tucked-away town where the snow never seemed to stop coming down, in a mountain-sized house the color of sky, lived a girl with thick hair that took too long to dry. Her mother would plead, "Ruthie Bon Bair, when you finish your bath, please dry your hair." But her hair often tangled, especially when wet. Brushing and drying just made her upset. Ruthie preferred to leave it alone and let her thick hair dry out on its own. Something happened one morning that caused her to frown. A grove of white mushrooms sprung up from her crown. "What is this?" she screeched, so full of dismay. "How did my head ever end up this way?" "I've told you once, and I've told you twice," reminded her mother in a voice not so nice. "Do not go to bed with a wringing wet head. Use a brush, a comb, and a dryer instead. Now try not to pout. I'll pull them all out." But later that morning the mushrooms grew back, and along with the white there were yellow and black. What Ruthie saw next sure gave her a start. A tall trail of ferns poked right through her part. And on the back of her noggin, so increasingly fertile, grew a mound of green moss in the shape of a turtle. "It looks like a forest is growing up there. Do something quick. Please save my hair." "I've told you once, and I've told you twice," reminded her mother in a voice not so nice. "Do not go to bed with a wringing wet head. Use a comb, a brush, and a dryer instead. Now wipe off your tears, and I'll get my shears." All through the next day, Ruthie's head was still troubled. The mushrooms were back, but their quantity doubled. The feathery ferns, they too reappeared, not just in her part, but behind her left ear. Ruthie peeked in the mirror and let out a yelp. 6 water lilies were now clung to her scalp. The house was soon crowded in all sorts of places, with lily-filled urns and overstuffed vases. Decorative wreaths that were braided with blooms hung over each doorway of all 18 rooms, and served with each meal every day after day was a fresh mushroom stew, a new soup or souffle. "I've told you once, and I've told you twice," reminded her mother in a voice not so nice. "Just look at the trouble your wet hair can bring. I think we must now give the doctor a ring." She came with her ointments, her potions, and nurse, but the doctor seemed only to make matters worse. She pinched, she poked, she pricked, and she prodded, then scratched at her head while the nurse simply nodded. "I'm not able to help, but I do have a plan. Maybe the gardener could lend you a hand." The gardener had long ago packed up his hoe, his pots and his seeds at the first sign of snow. It was all stored away until spring in his shed. Then he said with regret while he studied her head, "In all my experience with planting and sowing, I only know how to get plants to keep growing. It seemed Ruthie's roots do in fact need repair. Perhaps you'll consider an expert in hair?" The hairdresser came with his boxes and trays filled with hair products, gel tonics, and sprays. He trimmed back the lilies and combed through the moss. He pinned down the ferns and massaged in a gloss. Then he sprayed and he teased, he ironed and creamed, but the moss just looked thicker and the mushrooms now gleamed. The hairdresser confessed, hands covered in goo, "I've never seen anything quite like this do." With the doctor, the nurse, and the hairdresser too, Ruthie's mom and the gardener discussed what to do. A smile crossed the face of Ruthie Bon Bair, for the weather outside had captured her stare. With no coat and no boots, she ran out in the cold. Then before her mother or others could scold, she turned them all and began to explain. "Surely you all must think I am insane, but the reason I'm out here, like this in the snow, is because in the winter plants no longer grow. And just when the crowd had thought they'd seen the worst, she dove into the snow and landed head first. Her mom and the doctor tugged with their might. The gardener and hairdresser pulled her upright. The nurse wrapped her shoulders in a long woolly coat and fastened a muffler around Ruthie's throat. Covered in snow from her crown to her chin, with dripping wet hair and a goose-pimpled chin, Ruthie shivered, she jittered, she shuddered, and suddenly noticed as she felt with her hand that when she returned to the house's front stoop, the plants on her head had all started to droop. The lilies had wilted and withered away, the mushrooms were shriveled, their color now gray. The turtle-shaped moss had plopped to the ground, the plumes of green ferns were now sagging and brown. There was barely enough for a miniature wreath, and Ruthie declared through her chattering teeth, "I do prefer having my old plant-free head, and I'll take care of my hair before I go to bed." Back in her house with a dryer in hand, she dried her wet mane to the very last strand. She brushed, she combed, and she styled with deft. Not a single droplet of moisture was left. But when Ruthie awoke the very next day, it seemed more trouble was headed her way. An over-dried scalp plagued Ruthie Bon Bair, and now a flowering cactus poked through her hair. I hope you enjoyed the reading of Ruthie Bon Bair, Do Not Go to Bed with Wringing Wet Hair. I think this book is just hysterical. It makes me laugh out loud, it makes me smile. And I don't know about anybody else who has long hair, but sometimes when you get out of the shower, it's tough to get through. So I think there's been a time in my life where I've wanted to avoid brushing my hair for sure. But the part that I love the most is at the end where the author does a little bit of a twist, and it makes it seem like there could be a whole nother story that comes out of here from Ruthie's dry scalp. So over the long weekend that's headed your way, or the following long weekend for our adjusted April break, I challenge you to go ahead and write a second story about Ruthie Bon Bair and her crazy hair, or to create a second part of a story that you've already written. I would love for you to share those with me because I really am missing seeing students and I'm missing seeing your work. So I hope everyone is well. I hope you enjoyed the book, and feel free to email me your second part of Ruthie Bon Bair by email at tostrander@shrewsbury.k12.ma.us. Looking forward to reading your writing. Talk soon, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.